So today's episode is really for any of you out there who are interested in this idea that we are in a moment in time where more of our human capabilities are coming online, more of the multidimensionality of our being. If any of that is intriguing to you, this is definitely the episode for you, because what we're going to be exploring is really the intersection between astrology and astrological timing and pivotal astrological moments that are built into like the fabric of nature, essentially, where that intersects with what science is finding in terms of the shifts in the earth itself, and what is very clear that the ancients absolutely already knew. Most importantly, why you should care, why any of this matters for accessing more of your own multidimensional capabilities, more of your ability to connect, commune, download insights from beyond this third dimension reality. And so with us today, we have Cayelin Castell, who is an alchemical astrologer. She is brilliant. She is definitely one of the wisdom keepers in this field of astrology. She's been studying for, I don't even know how many years, decades. And I asked her before we got started, how long have you been interested in this particular aspect of astrology? Because this is kind of like astrology, astronomy. This isn't your typical astrology conversation. And she said, from the very beginning. This has been something I've been interested in exploring from the very beginning of my astrological studies. So, Cayelin, welcome back to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm so happy you're here. And there couldn't be a more timely opportunity for us to talk about this, because I know the equinox and in alignment with the Galactic Center that happens every single day are two of these very important critical moments we're going to be exploring together. And we're right about to get to the equinox, at least this March equinox here in 2025.
Something I just learned, I love what you just said, Amanda, that was really well said, thank you. And something I just learned is that us meteorologists, or so from a meteorological point of view, spring starts on March 1st.
Wow.
Because the way the weather patterns happen and the way the sun is crossing and, warming and cooling and all these crazy wild weather things happen, they consider March 1st to be the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And then March 21st is the astronomical equinox. So I love that we're having this conversation leading into that. And that we can also bring in the fact that it's not just the astronomy and the astrology, but it's also from a meteorological point of view as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, let's just start, because we started having a really interesting conversation before we even hit record. And I was like, David, stop. I want to get this. I want to be able to share this with everybody. Tell us about your perspective in terms of why this is actually an astrological conversation.
Well, so when we're looking at the equinox, we know it's the equinox when the sun reaches 0 degrees Aries. And that's when the sun is rising exactly due east and setting due west across the planet. And what they've found is that when that is happening, it's the magnetic field of the Earth and the magnetic field of the sun is somehow aligning. And so it's creating all these effects that are taking place on the Earth, heightened at the time, even before the equinox is exact, and after the equinox is heightened around the equinox time. And so they're called, they call them equinox cracks in the magnetosphere of the Earth that create, no matter what part of the solar cycle we're in. It could be we're at the height of the solar cycle, the 11-year solar cycle, or at the lowest end of it. But these will increase and magnify around the equinox, especially the March equinox. Definitely at the September equinox, it does it as well. But they found more happening at the March equinox.
What's an equinox crack? What does that mean?
It means it's a crack in the magnetosphere. So there's this magnetic field around the Earth, and it protects this from the solar radiation, I guess. That's one of the ways to think about it. But because of how the sun is relating to the earth at the equinox, at the time of the equinox, it's starting to be more aligned to east and west than, say, at the solstices when the sun's more north in the northern hemisphere. Well, I guess it's more north in the southern hemisphere as well, but different season, and then more south in the winter or the December time. But this is the east and west. This is like it's affecting the magnetosphere of the earth, so that the light coming in, the auroras, so the aurora borealis just goes off the charts at this time of the year, no matter where we are in the solar cycle. So usually you see more auroras when we're at the height of the solar cycle, and less, if any, at the lower end of it, except at the equinoxes, it just is, there's so much more. So they know that this is affecting. So like if we think about that light energy coming to the earth, lighting us up, giving us energy that even if we can't see it, we can feel it. So I think ancient cultures were very aware of this and why they built a lot of their sites. So, for example, the pyramid Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, it lights up the serpent on the pyramid. It's like there's this light thing that goes up all the way up to the top. When the sun is rising, or I think it's when it's setting there, it lights up the serpent. And Kukulkan means serpent. It's the serpent god. So they were totally aligned with that, and they knew how to place it just exactly in the right space to capture that equinox sun. There's petroglyph sites that certain petroglyphs light up. There's light and shadow around them. Certain ones light up at the different seasons, but especially at the equinoxes. There are pyramids, and then also there's places where the sun will rise up and be on the top of the highest spire of a temple site. I mean, they really were attuned to how to create a sense of the magic that's happening at the equinox. So amazing.
Well, clearly they weren't going to all this trouble because it was a cute little party trick, or it was, it was just an aesthetic thing. Like there was clearly a purpose behind it, because to have such mathematical precision, to have so much intention and thought going into these very complex structures that they're building, they would have had to be doing that for a very important purpose.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. What do you think that is, and how does that relate to us right now?
So ancient cultures tended to do ceremony at the seasonal points, and especially the equinox, I feel like was one of the important ones. There's a book that I've been aware of for many years called The Equinox and Solstice Ceremonies of the Golden Dawn. And they said it was at the equinoxes when the magnetic field of the earth was lowered, which is basically what happens because the sun is going east and west over the planet, was the time that you could access other realms and dimensions. And so that was the important time to do ceremony, so you could take advantage of that time to get that connection to other realms and dimensions. Maybe insights and downloads and information coming through happening at that time. And so it is interesting to note too that the equinox for many, many cultures was the New Year's point. And sometimes they use the new moon or the full moon closest to the equinox, which is interesting because this year we have the full moon like exactly a week or so before the equinox, and the new moon almost exactly a week after the equinox. So we have a last quarter moon, and I will share a little bit something about that because it's activating the Galactic Center. That is the other piece we want to talk about. But they would have these ceremonies that they did because they knew it was important to align and have the awareness, have the alignment, have the intention of what it is they were co-creating with great mystery.
Wow. I mean, this is a little off topic, but it reminds me of when I learned the true purpose of the Hawaiian hula, which originally was to raise the vibration, the frequency in ceremony in order for the priests, the kahunas, to speak to the divine more clearly. So it was it was very intentionally designed to raise the frequency and to make that communion and communication, I mean, more accessible.
More accessible, yes. I love that. And I think about Native American dance but they don't do hula, but they do their own version of the dances at these very important times of the year. They're raising the frequency also to make them easier to connect.
Right.
So that's something people could tune into. It's like, what would be a great ceremonial dance to tune into around the equinox? It doesn't have to be the exact equinox. It could be before or after, but yeah, I mean, we have this doorway that's opening. In the Upanishads, they talk about how the sun is the doorway to other worlds. The sun is, or another way they say it is how the sun is the doorway into the knowing. So when you're tuning into the sun, especially at the equinox, when it's furthest, most exact east and west rising setting across the planet, it's opening the doorway into the knowing.
Let's talk about the other opening. That this is super fascinating because this one happens every day, every 24. There's an opening within a 24-hour period, correct? This is with the Galactic Center?
Yeah, so what happens is they started doing research on, they were doing research on psychic development, ESP, people tuning in and so on. And it was Palo Alto, California, or someplace in California, I forget exactly. But they were doing this research and they found every day when Galactic Center was directly overhead, it increased their psychic abilities or their ESP abilities 400%. 400%. They were like, whoa. And this was for everybody that was, doing this. And so they started to recognize, and Galactic Center is overhead every day. I mean, literally every day it's overhead. But what's amazing about March is that Galactic Center is overhead about the time the sun is rising. So then we have this, this activation of the magnetic field of the Earth by the sun rising due east and due west, creating that whole equinox effect with Galactic Center overhead, meaning that we have this opportunity to connect into the energy from the Galactic Center beaming right down onto us at that time. And it shifts about 4 minutes every day, when it's exactly overhead, but it doesn't have to be in that 4 minutes or in that. You can really work with an hour before and after the exact point and still get tuned into the energy of having Galactic Center overhead. But we do know for sure in March, all over the planet, this is happening for people around the time the sun is rising.
And so this is regardless of where you're at on the planet, Galactic Center is overhead at sunrise throughout the month.
Around sunrise. Yeah, it's not precise and it shifts off a little bit. I can send you a link. I have a whole table of the different times, and also latitude, longitude, where you are on the planet will affect the exact time the Galactic Center is overhead. But you don't have to have the exact moment. You can be within an hour on either side of that time, and be tuning in and asking for guidance, or asking for what's next, or tuning in and setting your intentions. Because then you have this energy coming straight from the center of the galaxy to help support that.
Have you played around with this, Cayelin?
I have.
Okay, give us some stories. What have you experienced?
Oh, gosh. Well, sometimes I'm amazed at things that, like, I ask often for insights, guidance, support, protection, pretty much every day, pretty much as I'm waking up in the morning. And sometimes that's long before the sun's coming up, depending on the time of year. And things will just like magically appear in my life. And I'll see, I'll just say, hey, can you let me know if I'm on the right track? And then I'll see, like one time I was doing a lot of ancestral healing work. And I was saying, am I making any progress here? It's like, I need a sign to see if this is something that is actually working. And so I go for my morning walk and I see a Gila monster. Now here in Arizona, in the desert here, there are Gila monsters. They're pretty big lizards, about like this big. Some of them smaller, of course, but they're rare to see. They're underground 97% of the time.
Wow.
And some people have lived their whole life and they've never seen them. I see them a lot because they're like a medicine animal for me. But I was just like so astounded because they're the ancient ones of the desert. They're like dinosaur related kind of creatures. And so I was like, okay, thank you. That was a good sign. So I think we need to ask for signs and then be open to what shows up. I have another story. And in fact, I wonder, I might have told this one before. It's like I was asking if I'm on the right path. And I'm listening as I'm doing my morning walk. I was listening to, I think it was Don Juan talking to Carlos Castaneda. Anyway, and he said, you might as well follow a path with heart because all paths lead nowhere. So if you follow a path with heart, at least it's going to be fun. And full of, so I take about 20 steps and I find this heart rock.
Oh, wow.
It's like, I'm on the path with heart. So these are the kinds of things we can look for. It doesn't, sometimes it might be an animal that shows up or something like, you need to ask. And it could be like something somebody says, or you get an unexpected email out of nowhere that is just about exactly what you were wondering about. Things like that can happen when we're tuning in and asking and creating that ceremonial intent. And it doesn't have to be a big production. I mean, it's fun when it is, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes you can just ask and then the answers will come.
And Cayelin, what in the astrology is there to point us in the direction of opening up to more communication and communion from beyond what we can see, taste, smell, and be aware of in this material reality?
So the this equinox 2025, it is off the charts amazing. It opens with I think it's already started. Venus went retrograde on March 1st. Mercury's going retrograde. They're crossing the 0 Aries point 3 times. Anytime planets cross that point, it doesn't have to just be the sun, but that means they're rising due east and setting due west. They're also tracking along the Earth, and they may not have the power because they're further out, but they're still, it's like opening the doorway for us to get more insight, more information coming down in if we're open to receive it. So we have a March 14th total lunar eclipse visible across the US, which I'm very, very happy to watch, even though it's the middle of the night, not my favorite time. But, and then on March 29th, we have another solar eclipse, 93%, almost not total. They call it a partial eclipse, but but not that visible. Little portions of the US can see that. But also then what that means is that at the equinox, within a couple of days of the exact equinox point, we have the moon at the last quarter moon that will be passing over Galactic Center. What's amazing about this is that every 19 years, the moon goes to its most extreme out of bounds. And this March 22nd last quarter moon is the most extreme phase of the moon in this lunar standstill, this 19-year lunar standstill. The last time this happened was in 2006. There was an eclipse on March 14th that wasn't total lunar eclipse, it was a partial. And then there was an eclipse on March 29th, solar eclipse on March 29th. So it was a last quarter moon, and that was the last time we had this lunar standstill. And it was as far out and extreme in its out of bounds nature as it is this time. Now, what I mean by out of bounds is that the sun rising on the horizon can rise at equinox due east and due west, and then at, depending on what season, but June solstice, it rises furthest north, and December solstice, it rises furthest south, and it can never go past those points. But the moon can, and so can the other planets. They can go past that. So they're considered out of bounds. They're considered outside the boundaries of our everyday reality. So when the moon is outside the boundaries, then way more things are possible from our more limited 3D perspective. And in addition to that, it's crossing Galactic Center. So when the moon is that far out of bounds, it drops way below the ecliptic and literally crosses right over the top of Galactic Center. And the moon I see as a transmitter. So it transmits from wherever it happens to be passing by. And so the moon at this equinox time passing over Galactic Center with the Galactic Center overhead is amplifying the transmission coming from Galactic Center at the time of the last quarter moon. I think it's most exact with the Galactic Center on March 21st. The last quarter moon is March 22nd, but still, just this whole other factor that can only happen every 19 years. And in 2006, when this was happening, the eclipses weren't in the same way they're happening now. And it'll be 2044 before this happens again. The eclipses will be a little bit different than they are right now, because this has to do with the sorrow side. There's a whole lot of things that it has to do with, but they won't be quite exactly the precise ones that are happening. But about every 19 years, the moon comes back to where it was. So if it happens to be a 19-year birthday for you, like age 19, age 38, age 57, age 76, age 95, then the moon will be very close to where it was when you were born, because it comes back around every 19 years. So this is part of this 19-year lunar standstill. But now we have all these other factors, like Neptune going into Aries for the first time in 165 years on March 30th, very close to the equinox. It's passing the 0 Aries point 3 times. Saturn's going to do the same thing. It's a little bit later, though, not till May that it's going to go in. But then Neptune and Saturn come together at 0 Aries in February of 2026, a month before that equinox. And they're at the 0 Aries point. So again, when planets are there, that means they're on that east-west line. And they're amplifying, activating, and transmitting something. And it's a beginning point. If we think of the 0 Aries as an alpha beginning and 29 Pisces as with the omega ending, we have this ending, beginning, ending thing that's just amplified this March because of Venus going retrograde, crossing that point 3 times, Mercury going retrograde, crossing that point 3 times. Then Neptune is going to cross that point 3 times starting at the end of March. And Saturn will this year, but not until May. Then they come together at the 0 Aries point. And this hasn't happened in thousands of years that they came together, that Neptune and Saturn come together at 0 Aries. So I'm just like, okay, Neptune has to do with the formless, has to do with pure consciousness or the pure field of creative intelligence or whatever you want to call it. And Saturn has to do with the form. How is the formless coming into a new form? This is like another thing that's being activated at this equinox that is just so mind-blowing. Like expansive, it's like consciousness expanding is another way we could say it. Like whatever we've thought in the past, we may be seeing new things, expanding our perspective. And literally, I feel like changes in our DNA and how we are interacting and seeing how we're in this world, and how really for me, I mean, if you think about the 29 Pisces, absolute universal love is, the most concentrated expression of that. And so we've got all these planets also passing that point 3 times, the 29 Pisces point. So it's like, how are we changing the world through love? And Aries will take the action. It'll take the steps that needs to be done for that to happen. And Aries will protect what it loves. So, and of course, Pisces is just pure love. That's really, I think its essence is pure love, unless it's gotten distorted or disillusioned or something. But yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna be talking about this bigger astrology in our upcoming Navigating Change live panel webinar event featuring 5 astrologers. It's a donation-based, give as you wish event. So everyone's welcome. And astrologers including Cayelin, also Natasha Alter, Gemini Brett, Ari Moshe, and Nora Rochelle. We'll be having a discussion about these things because it's huge. I mean, if you just caught the essence of what Cayelin just shared about this time and the convergence of so many different cycles all at the same time with very clear messaging. I mean, Cayelin, that's been one of the most interesting things for me is I've been like, wow, the message and the invitation is so clear and so consistent that I'd love to shift the conversation to, okay, now what? Like, instead of just, what's happening, what's happening. Okay, what do we do with this? What are the qualities we can cultivate within ourselves to really harness this energy to be capable of bringing the qualities of universal love into form? Like, wow. I mean, what do we need to focus on within ourselves to be able to meet the invitation of this moment? Because it's huge. It's huge. So if any of you are interested in joining that event, it's officially open for registration. astrologyhub.com/change. That's astrologyhub.com/change. And we would love to see you there. And this is going to be a very lively, rich, alive conversation between 5 incredible astrologers who have very expansive viewpoints, but who are also very grounded. It's like, okay, here we go. We're expanding consciousness. Okay, let's bring it into form. I keep thinking also of like, there's like so much chaos, right? But it's like, how do we harness this and direct it and focus it for the good of all, for our own individual good, but also for the good of humanity. I mean, this is kind of the invitation of the Aquarian age, right?
Yes, absolutely. As you're saying that, it reminds me, I wish I had the full quote in front of me, but Jose Arguelles, he wrote Surfers of the Zavuya. And I actually read it on Hawaii in 2004 when I was there visiting a friend of mine. He
Wow.
had the book and I read the whole thing. But
What's it called again? Surfers of the
Zavuya, Zuvuyaya, Zuvuyaya.
Okay, we're going to put links to books and different things that are talked about here today in the show notes, including the live panel event I was just talking about. So you can check the show notes for links for these things.
Yes, good. Well, anyway, basically he talks about it's like surfing interdimensional time, possibilities or whatever. And that there are people that have skills in doing that. And that's what we're developing now. Now he wrote this. I read it in 2004. I think it had been written. He was the one that really got the harmonic convergence going in 1987, which was another lunar standstill moon time. Interesting. And so he basically says that it's all about, we have to shift our attitude to one of love and joy, and it won't work unless we play.
Oh, dang, this sounds horrible. Love, joy, and play. I mean, but it really is. I think for a lot of people, it feels like a tall order because we're so focused on what's happening and what appears to be happening, that it's really hard to like pull ourselves into a place of love, joy, and play. And tell us a little bit more about that. Like why would those be the qualities that
They're high vibrational energies. And so I think what keeps us in a lower vibration is, first of all, we need to feel what we feel. If we're angry, we're hurt, we're wounded, we're whatever it is, we need to feel that to transmute and transform it so that we can get to the greater love and joy and play. And that can take a while. And sometimes things will come back up and reactivate something you thought you'd let go of. So fun, not fun. But then if you're familiar with the territory, you get through it more quickly. And giving yourself permission, it's like, okay, I'm really pissed. I just need to feel that. Or I'm really hurt or I'm just grieving and I just need to feel that. And give yourself permission to do that when you can find a safe space to do that. And because and then also be intentional around it. It's like, I'm letting this go so I can get to a place of greater joy. Right? It says, I'm doing this for a reason. And I will say, for me, had really rough growing up and younger life and everything. And I am happier than I've ever been. And I have done a lot of this work. And I have created these intentions. And it works. I'm just saying it works. If we're willing to do it, if we're willing to embrace it, face the challenges, face the hurt, the pain, whatever it might be. I like to say the hurt and pain, guilt and shame, fear and blame, whine and complain, defend and explain. And transmute and transform that into the higher vibrational energies. And I just keep asking for that. It's like, okay, I'm willing to feel this so that I can transform it into something that's going to be a higher vibrational energy, because we can change the planet. We can change the consciousness of the planet if enough of us can come into that higher vibrational energy. And it doesn't even take 1%. It's less than that. And they found this when they were creating superconductive fields way back in the 70s. I learned about this when I was in college. And that the electrons that they, when they were trying to create the superconductive field, the electrons would just get more chaotic and crazy off the charts. It's kind of what we're experiencing now. And then a few of them would start to come into greater coherence and greater alignment. And then they'd reach a little tipping point, not 1%, just some n squared was the formula they used, and everything would line up into coherence like that. So that's that blink of an eye idea. Like everything can change in the blink of an eye. If enough of us can come together and really have the strong intention to be in that place of love, joy, and play, and taking the steps that help to create that, to Aries is very action oriented. It's like, what does it take for me to act in a way that will help support that?
So for the people that feel like it's maybe they've been taught, they've absorbed that it's selfish to focus on these things, or that it's spiritually bypassing. I mean, that's the thing that comes up a lot, or it's putting our heads in the sand and not acknowledging the pain and the suffering in the world. What do you say to that?
Well, yeah. So I do think some people tend to spiritual bypass or light polarize, or, I mean, you could see that when I was growing up, the new age was the thing that was being talked about a lot. And people were just like only focusing on the good and whatever. And I even did that for a while because that was kind of the background that I had. But then started to realize, oh, you really have to deal with the hurt and the pain and the guilt and the shame, because otherwise it's underneath, it's there, it's running things, and it will catch up to you. You can spiritual bypass for so long and then it won't work anymore.
Well, and this is where your emphasis on alchemy comes in, right? So this is what you're talking, this process of alchemizing these denser frequencies that we all carry. So as these things come up, you're actually, with your intention to face them, embrace them, integrate them, to transform them into love, joy, play. That's that process of alchemy within yourself that then enables you to move through it. And so instead of just repressing those things down and pushing them down and pretending they don't exist, you're actually like facing them head on in a way, and bringing them into your system in order. Well, they're already there. You don't have to bring them.
Right.
Yeah. So like, but really like embracing them, right? To actually transform them.
So you're reminding me of something very important too, is anytime we set an intention, anything that is not in alignment with that intention comes up to get cleared.
Yes.
And I had to learn that the hard way.
Same. Oh my God. A lot of times.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, I have such a good intention, and it seems like this is not what's happening at all.
Why is the opposite happening?
Exactly. And because it has to get transmuted and transformed in order for the intention to actually be fulfilled. And so when those things start coming up, and the thing is that, at least in my experience, I've made huge strides, and then sometimes I feel like I get setbacks. And then I make huge strides, and then another setback will come along. And it's just however long it takes to continue to transmute and transform, basically do the alchemy within yourself. And it does make a difference. It ultimately does make a difference. I mean, I have people tell me all the time they love my energy.
I was on the phone with Natasha Alter this morning, and I was like, I just love her energy every time, and it's so consistent. Like there's just this energy of joy that you exude, and literally, Cayelin, I'm like, every single time I'm with you. And so it's amazing. And I think that our audience can feel that as well. Our community can feel that. And I think it's really interesting to think about that as service itself. Like all the dedication, all the focus, all the work that you've done on yourself is the service to humanity.
Yes.
And then it enables you to be on a podcast like this right now and to exude it, which like you were talking about the electrons, it's contagious, right? There was something else you told me about the electrons, a few times back that we spoke privately. So you talked about the chaos, and then you talked about a few electrons coming into coherence and how that brought all the electrons up, or most of them. But then you also talked about what happened to the more chaotic electrons that didn't come into coherence.
Yeah, they can. So what happens is once you've created that superconductive field, that you can, no lower vibrational energy can penetrate that field. It has to bypass it, or it can get uplifted into it. I guess maybe the electrons can make their choice. I don't know, but so I would like to think that if we're creating a superconductive field of love for planet Earth, the consciousness grid of the Earth, and that's what I energize every day. It's like what I want to see happen. But it's not being forced on anybody. It's like you will either just have to bypass that field, or maybe if you choose to be in it, then you get to be uplifted in it. And how cool is that? And so I wonder, and I think about, does that mean that then sometimes some people wouldn't have to necessarily, or would they? I mean, I don't really know, to do all the hard work that's been done to create that field.
Well, I can say that it's people like you, I believe, people like you who have been doing this since the 70s or 60s or whatever. Yes. I do believe you have made it easier. I don't think any of us get to bypass it. But look, we're even having these conversations, whereas probably these conversations weren't even happening as much. There weren't as many stories of people who've actually done the work and who could stand there, decades later being like, look, here's what happens when you do the work. Here's the end result. Here's some stories. I do believe it's making it easier and maybe faster. I don't necessarily think that there would be a bypass, but maybe, who knows? I don't know. Think about it, maybe through our children in a way, because in a lot of ways, the children are not even having to absorb the initial wound in the first place,
Right.
right?
That was always my intent for my children. Of course, I wasn't able to quite do that, but that they had to go through whatever they had to go through. But I feel like as we raise the consciousness field of the Earth, the collective consciousness field of the Earth, there'll be a lot. It'll be quicker. It'll be easier. It'll be more sustainable over time. Yeah.
And you all are probably tired of hearing me say this. Anybody who listens to the podcast. One of my favorite quotes from Michael Beckwith, who's a beautiful spiritual teacher that I adore. He says, pain pushes until vision pulls. So what you just said reminds me of, like, as humanity, as a collective, we've been pushed around by pain quite a bit for the last thousands of years. And so potentially, once we've moved through a lot of that, we can live in a place where vision's pulling more often than pain is pushing. But who knows? Maybe the third dimension is just kind of set up to be this way, because it's like a refining stick, or like it's like we're sharpening the tools, or becoming the diamonds, or whatever metaphor you want to think about, through some of that pressure and heat, right?
But I do feel like we can go through times like ages, or golden ages have been talked about, and prophecies that are seemingly maybe possible to come true now. I think about the Hopi prophecy that basically says we're the ones we've been waiting for, and it's all about peace, plenty, and illumination. So how are we helping to bring that prophecy into fulfillment? And successful prophecies, like if they're dire, the successful ones are the ones that don't come true because we changed our ways. If they're hopeful and great, the successful ones are the ones that come true because we changed our ways. Right? Because we embraced that and decided that that's what we were going to go for.
So you feel people have a choice right now, that here are the energies, here's what's available, here's this, like you've talked, doorways are open, portals are open, and we're making a choice for how we want to step through. Am I putting words in your mouth?
Yeah. I feel like that's true. And and when I see all the horrible things happening to people around the world, And I'm very empathic, Pisces sun, what can I say? But a lot of Neptune. I'm very empathic and it's hard. So, but I have to remind myself sometimes that people have made choices. They chose to come into whatever life they came into, whatever circumstances they came into, to experience whatever it was that their soul wanted to experience. And it's not my job to interfere with that. It's my job to hold a different frequency and a different field. And if they want to join with that, then that's awesome. And please come join. But otherwise, it's sometimes we just have to allow people to have the experience that they've chosen, even though we know it's something we would never choose.
But maybe we have chosen.
Maybe we have, yes, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, well, if you would like to choose to enter into the field that we're going to be creating on March 18th with Cayelin and the 4 other amazing astrologers and this incredible community, you are invited. So again, go check the show notes, astrologyhub.com/change. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've covered the importance of this March equinox. We've covered the Galactic Center and the daily alignment that we all have access to, but that is going to be even more heightened because of the lunar standstill, which, by the way, if you're interested, any of you are interested in learning more about that lunar standstill that Cayelin was talking about, Gemini Brett is going to be on the podcast here next week talking about that because he agrees with Cayelin that this is a huge deal. So he's going to be covering that as well. And then the other thing, Cayelin, is that at the panel event, you are going to be covering another important cycle that we didn't touch on too much here today. But can you just give us an idea of the role of Venus in all of this and why she's so important in the storyline that we're exploring right now?
Yes. So ancient cultures were very much into the Venus cycle. What's happening with Venus now, I tracked back 251 years, happened exactly the same as it's happening now. But we didn't have all these other factors happening around the equinox. Just this Venus retrograde was happening at the same time, and a new Venus cycle was starting. And that was 1774. March 1st, 1774, Venus went retrograde. Exact same degree, within 10 minutes. I mean, it's all these amazing factors that are happening with it. And it's opening our awareness. I can definitely talk about this more in the panel, but opening our awareness to how it's not an Aries cycle because she's conjunct the sun in Aries, and that's where people start the cycle. And it's not a Pisces cycle because she rises up in the morning sky in Pisces, but she may also be rising up for some people in Aries. And so we're seeing it as an Aries-Pisces blending of the two and the things that's really giving us the insight on that is all the Aries Pisces dances that are going on with all these planets. It's Aries and Pisces, and how do the two work together? So we can talk more about that.
Ooh, I just got this like vision of the warrior and the lover blend together.
Yes. Like the healer, the mother, the universal mother, the warrior protector. So many. I'm Sun in Pisces with Venus in Aries, so I have lived this, and being able to now put words to what it has been my experience it's just mind blowing. So amazing.
Ooh, okay, so we have that to look forward to at the panel event. I'm definitely going to ask Cayelin to go into more depth on Venus and this Aries, Pisces, Venus cycle and what that means for us. So we'll talk about that. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life. Thank you, Cayelin, for sharing so much wisdom with us, for being available for the panel event, for being an inner circle astrologer. And I think we're looking at 2026, but you're all signed up for that. So inner circle members, you have more teaching from Cayelin to look forward to. And just thank you all for being here and tuning into conversations like this at this epic moment in time that we are alive in together. Like, wow.
Together is the key word, because when we come together, we exponentially increase the power of our intentions and what we're seeding for what this epic moment is all about. So it's about being together.
Thank you, Cayelin. All right. Well, I'll look forward to connecting with you all on the next episode. Make sure and check the show notes for the links. And take care, everyone. Have fun playing with the Galactic Center Alignment and getting ready for your Equinox ceremony and all the things that we have to look forward to. All right, everybody. Thank you so much and take care.